Welcome to Y-Stick. You open your calendar and it looks like a crime scene. Back-to-back blocks, no gaps, not even lunch survived. You tell yourself you are busier than any human being has ever been. You are not. The real answer is far stranger than that. For most of human history, an average day looked nothing like yours. Less hustle, more silence. Long stretches of time spent doing what modern eyes would call nothing at all. Somewhere between the invention of fire and the invention of the group chat, humans convinced themselves that constant motion equals survival. It never did. In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Borsche Lee went to live with the Jew/Honsi, a hunter-gatherer people in the Kalahari Desert. He wanted to answer a simple question. How many hours a week does it actually take to stay alive out here? He tracked their time. He counted their food runs. The number he came back with stunned the field. Around 15 hours a week spent gathering and hunting food. 15. Less than 2 hours a day. The rest of the time was rest, conversation, storytelling, naps, and what researchers dryly call social maintenance, which is a very academic way of saying gossip. Somewhere your ancestors are looking at your open plan office and quietly filing a complaint. This finding fed directly into one of anthropology's most famous ideas. In 1966, Marshall Solins argued that hunter-gatherers were, in his words, the original affluent society. Not because they had more stuff, because they wanted less of it. Their tools matched their needs were modest, and the gap between the two closed early in the day. Affluence, Solins pointed out, can be reached two ways. You can produce enormously, or you can simply want very little. Foragers took the second road and got there faster. Here is the part that should bother you a little. We inherited the myth that prehistoric life was, in the philosopher Thomas Hobbes's old description, nasty, brutish, and short. Constant danger, constant labor, every waking hour a fight against extinction. It is a vivid image. It is also mostly wrong. Hunger existed, danger existed, but the day-to-day rhythm was not the non-stop grind we assume it was. If anything, it had more slack in it than yours does. If your ancestors worked 15 hours a week and still survived, why does your inbox act like the apocalypse starts at 9 a.m.? Decades after Lee's original fieldwork, the anthropologist James Sussman returned to study the same Jew/Honsi communities, and he found the pattern held up. Work orbited around actual necessity. Once enough food existed for now, people stopped. Not because they were lazy, because stopping was the rational response to having enough. Evolution did not design you for productivity. It designed you for survival, clocked you out the moment survival was handled, and never once mentioned quarterly targets. Sussman noticed something else worth sitting with. The Jew/Honsi did not divide their days into the neat categories you use: work over here, leisure over there, rest scheduled in guilty 15-minute increments. The boundary barely existed. Tracking an animal blurred into conversation. Gathering food blurred into teaching a child which roots were safe to eat. Time was not a resource to be spent efficiently. It was just the medium everything happened in, the way water is the medium a fish happens in. Nobody in the Kalahari was optimizing their morning routine. There was no morning routine to optimize. There was just morning, and then whatever the morning required, and then it was afternoon. Other researchers found similar patterns far outside the Kalahari. Studies of the Hadza people in Tanzania, another population that still hunts and gathers, show comparable numbers. Food-related work landing somewhere between 2 and 6 hours on an average day, depending on season. Not 15-hour grinds. Not desperate scrambles from dawn to dusk. A working morning, then the rest of the day belonged to everyone equally, the way a Sunday belongs to nobody in particular. It is tempting to assume these are isolated exceptions, small pockets of ease surrounded by an otherwise brutal prehistoric world. The evidence does not support that assumption. Similar leisure-heavy patterns turn up across a wide range of foraging societies studied through the 20th century, from the Arctic to the tropics, in climates that could not be more different from each other. What they share is not an easy environment. It is a small, stable set of wants matched to a set of skills good enough to meet them. That combination, wherever it appears, tends to produce a shorter working day than the one you are currently living. It is worth pausing here to notice how thoroughly this contradicts the picture most people carry around unexamined. Somewhere in the collective imagination sits a caveman, hunched, exhausted, perpetually one bad afternoon away from starving. That image did a lot of culture. It made the 8-hour, then 10-hour, then always available workday feel like an improvement, a hard-won upgrade from a miserable ancestral baseline. If the baseline was never that miserable to begin with, the upgrade starts to look a lot more like a different arrangement, not a strictly better one. So where did the marathon workday come from? The honest answer is agriculture. Farming did something foraging never did. It let humans store surplus. And surplus changes. Suddenly, there is more to protect, more to plan, more to hoard against a bad season. Suddenly, some people have more surplus than others, and hierarchy quietly moves in and starts rearranging the furniture. The workday did not lengthen because life got harder in some vague ancient times sense. It lengthened because humans invented a new problem, too much to manage, and never quite enough to feel secure about it. Scarcity, it turns out, is often a mindset invented after abundance shows up, not a condition that abundance was supposed to fix. Grain needs guarding. Livestock needs fencing, feeding, defending from thieves and predators alike. Land needs boundaries, and boundaries need enforcing, and enforcing needs someone willing to stand at the edge of a field with a spear making sure the boundary means something. None of that existed when the whole point of foraging was that nothing much could be hoarded in the first place. You cannot stockpile a hunted animal for very long before it stops being food and starts being a problem. Surplus grain, on the other hand, keeps. And the moment something keeps, someone starts guarding it, someone starts counting it, and someone starts working extra hours to make sure their share of it grows. Historians and archaeologists studying the shift from foraging to farming have repeatedly found the same uncomfortable pattern. Skeletal remains from early agricultural settlements often show more signs of nutritional stress, not less, than remains from foraging populations that came before them. More repetitive strain on joints. Shorter average stature in some populations. The story we tell about agriculture as an unambiguous leap forward glosses over just how much harder, and how much longer, the actual workday became for the people living through it. That mindset is still running the show, several thousand years later. You do not forage for calories anymore. You forage for approval, for inbox zero, for the version of your life the internet insists you are behind on. The Kalahari sun told your ancestors when to stop. Your phone was specifically engineered never to. Consider the modern equivalent of an evolutionary drive gone slightly off script. Dopamine, the brain's little reward chemical, was built for a world of scarce, hard-won wins, a ripe fruit, a successful hunt, a fire that finally caught. It was never built for a notification that arrives every 40 seconds telling you someone liked a photo of your lunch. Dopamine does not know the difference between finding food after 3 days of searching and refreshing an app. It just fires, cheerfully, on command, like an eager intern with no sense of proportion. Here is the twist that tends to surprise people most. Foraging societies were not idle out of laziness. They were, by several measures, working less because their economic system had no mechanism for infinite wanting. There was no marketing department in the Kalahari convincing anyone that they needed a slightly newer spear. Want stayed roughly constant. So the gap between want and have stayed small, and small gaps close quickly. Ours does not close, because ours is engineered to keep moving, one review, one upgrade, one auto-renewing subscription at a time. Think about what a modern want actually requires to satisfy it. A new phone does not simply replace an old one. It requires researching models, comparing prices, waiting for a sale, financing the purchase, then adjusting to a slightly different screen size for a week. A Jew/Honsi forager wanting a new digging stick walked to where the right wood grew, cut one, and was done before lunch. Compare the two processes honestly, and it becomes hard to argue that modern wanting is simpler, faster, or less exhausting than ancient wanting ever was. It is just better disguised as convenience. Now hold that against your own week, the overflowing calendar. The guilt that shows up the moment you sit still for more than 9 minutes. None of that is an ancient inheritance. It is a remarkably recent invention, dressed up to look permanent so nobody questions it. Somewhere, a Jew/Honsi forager is looking at your 6 a.m. spin class, filed neatly under self-care, and quietly wondering why you drove somewhere to sweat when the nap was right there. None of this means modern life is worse, or that convenience is a trap you should feel guilty about. It means the story you were told about constant ancestral hustle was mostly invented after the fact, to make today's hustle feel inevitable. It is not inevitable. It is a choice a few thousand years of surplus talked you into, one grain silo and one smartphone notification at a time. So the next time your day fills up until there is no daylight left in it, ask yourself the question your 15-hour-a-week ancestors would have asked. Is this actually necessary, or does it just look necessary because everyone around me is doing it too? Somewhere between the first stored grain and the first push notification, the answer to that question got a lot blurrier than it used to be. It is worth asking anyway. Your ancestors certainly had the spare afternoon for it. You open your calendar again. It still looks like a crime scene, but now you know something your ancestors knew first and you forgot somewhere around the agricultural revolution. Busy was never the price of survival. It is just the story surplus told you, to keep you moving long after the actual work was done. Your ancestors would take one look at your schedule and go straight back to their nap.